when did that like really set in of like, I'm interviewing presidents, I'm interviewing the most famous people in the world, I'm covering the biggest stories in the world, and I'm delivering breaking news to someone like me watching in every city?
It's usually not, it wasn't something where I'm sitting down in a planned interview of a president. Now, like moderating a debate was a big deal for me because you have everybody sitting up there, right? I remember a moderated debate and there was Joe Biden and there's like Pete Buttigieg and there's, Tulsi Gabbard and Amy Klobuchar and all these people and Hillary Clinton and Bernie Sanders. Like moderating a debate was a big deal. And the Republican debate as well, when you're a part of that, that's a big deal. So you feel like, wow, okay, this is major. But usually it was the breaking news when something big happens and everybody comes to you. And so for example, when someone passes, right? Yeah. When someone passes, you get everybody on the phone.
Yeah.
Like everybody calls in. You may even get a president call in depending on who the person that's died is. But I remember one sticks out to me. Do you remember the grab him by the pee night?
Yeah, that was the Access Hollywood tape, right?
The Access Hollywood tape came out and they were trying to figure out, the Trump campaign was trying to figure out how they were going to respond. And I think every politician in the country called me. And that's when you realize, like, okay.
This is big.
This is big. Also, during COVID was big. And because during COVID, you had not only a worldwide pandemic, there was an election going on, and then you had George Floyd. Yeah. And everybody's at home because they can't go anywhere. We couldn't do anything. We couldn't go to work. Couldn't go to the supermarket or restaurant. So everyone's at home and they're sitting around watching TV or they have or their phone, right? And so I just remember one night when the world was on fire. It felt like there were fires in West Coast and protests on the East Coast and stuff happening in the middle in Chicago and Minneapolis and all of that stuff. And you want to know the truth? I'm anchoring the show from my home studio in my shorts with a suit on top in my pool house. And I'm like, if people only knew, they think I'm in the CNN studio, but I'm not that night.
Yeah.
I'm sitting at home.
Wow. And
it felt weird. That's when you realize, everyone is watching. You can feel it when something big happens. And so that's, to me, like when I felt it or when I knew it, but not when I'm, sitting in front of Joe Biden.
Yeah.
Because I'm comfortable just.
Nothing against Joe Biden. It's just.
No, nothing is. I mean, or Donald Trump. I interviewed Donald Trump 6-8 times, but I didn't sit there and go, "Oh my gosh, I'm interviewing Donald Trump." Usually, when something big happens and the world is tuning in,
it's incredible. And so you getting to live out that dream, that thing that was almost your that dream was like your healing therapy, like before you had anything else.
But that was really cool because usually people in broadcast would look down on cable. But during those years, like I don't know if the cable will ever have another moment like that where you have a Donald Trump, a COVID,
everything
pandemic,
and
George Floyd and all that. When you have all of that coming together, an election, that's pretty huge. And, a little bit after that, you had the war in Ukraine, but that was sort of after. But I don't think it'll ever have that moment where people are watching. And that's when cable news was really relevant. All the conversations were happening on cable news. It wasn't happening. I would watch broadcast anchors moderate a debate or town hall. And I'm like, why didn't you catch him on that?
Yeah.
Like, why didn't you fact check him on that? It's because they didn't know, because they weren't covering. I was covering it every single day and everyone was watching. And so, I think that was sort of the heyday, when it was at its, what do you call it?
Peak?
No, not peak, but what do I always say? I can't think of the word right now because I'm having a senior moment.
Well, you talk about being in that moment where everyone's watching you. You're covering the biggest stories happening. Yeah. The world politically has changed so much in your career. Yeah. I mean, this has to be the craziest time politically, right?
Yeah. 2016 was pretty crazy.
Yeah.
That was pretty nuts. The insurrection was crazy. This is crazy in a different way. Having a president who's running for re-election drop out is huge.
Sure.
Rarely happens. And it's happened before, but it rarely happens. And to be able to watch the vice president sort of step up and have the whole Democratic Party coalesce around her when that wasn't necessarily the way that they felt, probably 3 minutes or at 30 seconds before they said, hey, you're going to be the one.
Yeah.
So that's pretty interesting to watch. But I got to tell you, like, doing the social media stuff to me has been really eye-opening and fulfilling, because that's the way most people are getting their news these days, through social media.
Yeah.
And it's so funny for people in traditional media when they say, well, Don Lemon's, oh my God, he's out doing man on the street.
He's out
again.
TikTok videos. Oh my God.
And it's like, yeah, I am.
Because the people
and
watch.
I love it. And what are you doing? Like, I'm actually out talking to the people. I'm doing what I'm supposed to be doing. I'm talking to voters. And I've been doing, every time I go to a breaking news story, when I was in Ukraine and, people who were affected by the war, that's man on the street.
Yeah.
It's all man on the street. So, it's interesting. I feel like I am moving in the right direction and I'm in the right space. And it feels weird to some people because they don't see me sitting behind a desk in a big shiny set. But they'll catch up with me.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so I feel like I'm a little bit ahead of the game. The timing is good. And then eventually the folks who are in traditional media are going to have to evolve into what I'm doing.